Hello and welcome to Adventures in Messaging. I'm Emma Stratton and today I'm joined by Derek Frome, Head of Marketing at Ouster. Hello, Derek.
Hello, Emma. It's great to be talking with you.
It is awesome to be talking with you and congratulations on your recent going public with Ouster. It's very, very cool.
Thank you. Yes, quite a process, but very happy to be on the other side of it, but learned a lot through that for sure.
Yeah, that is awesome. So we'll talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. So one of the things I love about product marketers is just all the different stories about how people got into product marketing and the kind of backgrounds they came from. There's no one background I
Yeah.
found. And I love that, Derek, you were a political sciences major. First of all, I did think political science was about how to be a politician, but apparently it's not. But this background actually kind of gives you a really unique view on product marketing. So tell us a bit about how poli-sci plays into product marketing.
Sure. Yeah. So I started my career in political science undergrad in politics, doing communications for congressional candidates a couple times, Mayor Phoenix race at one point, and kind of disillusioned with politics, came into a great company called Medallia, which was only about 100 people at the time. They just raised a Series A. They'd been bootstrapped for like 10 years. Sequoia backed them. They were trying to do a bunch of growth. I lucked into a job with them and was really lucky to join an amazing company. So spent 3 years there, 2 years in their client services group, helped start the London office, came back and joined the product marketing team because I had this unholy mix of, I knew the product really, really well, and also I could write and communicate from all the communications I did from politics and then also the political science background. And the thing that kind of started to serve me that I didn't really realize at the time probably was actually helpful. Political science teaches you to think about structures and institutions and incentives. And that's quite valuable when you're doing product marketing work because you can dive into the nitty-gritty details and you can pull back and look at the whole market or look at a situation kind of at a meta level. So anyway, that's how I got started in product marketing.
It's so interesting. So talking about zooming out, looking at structures, how things fit.
Yeah.
So we talked about category creation,
Yeah.
right? And how you're able to see how a product might fit in the bigger landscape and be really strategic about it with this political background. How does that work? You talk a bit about category creation?
For sure. Yeah. And I was lucky to join Medallia's product marketing group at a time when we were trying to really create our first big positioning of the company and the product. And so I happened into this project around, what is our category? And what we came up with, and it's not just me by any means, there are lots of folks involved, but the broader industry was customer experience management. How do you get people to have a better experience dealing with your company? I think we've all probably dealt with companies that are terrible to deal with and others that are really, really pleasant, right?
Yes.
And what Medallia does is kind of help really big companies, Fortune 1000 companies, do that in a systematic and structured way. And the category that we came up with for that was operational customer experience management. It's one thing to do a research study about how your company is seen and it goes stale. You do a big study, it takes 6 months and then it's stale the day after it lands on someone's desk as this 300-page report. We realized the key was that we put that information on an ongoing basis, put that information in the hands of the frontline workers who are actually empowered and enabled to change the customer experience on a day-to-day basis. So that kind of categorization of what do? We do customer experience management. How do we do it better? We make it operational. And that's a concept that I've been able to take to a number of companies now. And how do we do it better? How do we want to frame the conversation around our company with investors, with analysts, with potential customers? And the framing of your company is your category. So defining your own category, creating a category of one, and then being the very best in that category. And then you can sell the category, not just the company. That's very powerful. It is the dream. It's accessible. It's accessible to anybody, though. All you have to do is you have to deeply understand the product, you have to deeply understand the market, and then you have to be a little bit creative. At Ouster, it took a year for us to create the categorization that has really defined the company. It was me and one other person sitting in a room with a whiteboard.
For years.
It's funny, we're doing some value messaging framework right now. And in this folder to my left, I actually have the notes from that day. I ripped them out of a notebook because I'm going to want these someday. We're just, how is it different? How is what we do different? And how should we build this category in a way that kind of defines everything that we do? And the thing that we came up with was digital LiDAR. There are 80 LiDAR companies. What does Ouster do differently? We have a digital product. It's based on chips. And then you can get into the whole cascade of what are the implications of that? What does it mean for a customer? How should an investor value you differently based on the fact that you're, semiconductor process, which is repeatable and scalable versus an analog competitor? We talk about MP3s versus, audio tapes. That is how wide the difference is. Even if the performance of the products today is very similar, kind of what underlies these products is very different. So that's where the categorization provides this frame to help someone understand something that they're never going to understand truly at a technical level, right?
Yeah. Incredible. And so how did it feel when you saw your hard work, that sentence, that category up on the banner on the side of the New York Stock Exchange? I mean, come on, how many marketers get that kind of payoff?
I traveled to New York for that with our CEO and CTO, CFO, head of product marketing. And that was pretty cool. I don't know, prior to that digital LiDAR message really kind of landing, we tried a couple things. And that's why we were in the room that day, because they weren't working. They didn't feel right to us. And so we didn't make use of them externally all that much. We tried them out in customer conversations. We tried them out with certain analysts, see if they bite. And that's, by the way, how you can sort of A/B test those things, is get on the phone with the Gartners and Forresters and kind of float those things out there over time and see what lands. Once you hit the right thing, it's very clear.
I mean, so what kind of feedback do you get from analysts, when you're kind of floating things? Do they just come out and just say, that sucks? Or are they like, oh, it's, interesting. How does it work?
If it's not working, it goes one of two ways, where you think this frame is going to simplify things and instead you get 1,000 questions about it. Like, oh boy, that didn't land. That's not doing what I hoped it would do. It's creating further confusion. Okay, let's go back to the drawing board. The way you know it works, though, is if they start repeating it.
Yeah.
If it lands in a report, if it's something that you hear them saying, same thing with customers. You can put this in your first call deck, and you obviously have to put some meat on the bones in order to do that. But if customers start reading it back to you, that's a really strong indication that you're going somewhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you think about all the bad category names out there that just aren't working? Yes, being a category of one is everyone wants it, but it's not possible, right? I mean, every new company cannot be in a category of one. And what I see is it gets a bit silly sometimes.
Totally.
And you're like, what even is this? And you're trying to understand what this is. So what are your thoughts about that whole situation? Just category insanity, category chaos.
I will say, I have intentionally stayed out of markets in some ways. I will not, mark my words, work at a marketing tech firm. Like there's just, I can't, I'm more drawn to sort of emerging growth industries anyway. But in that, I see why that happens. Here's the thing. In order for a frame category to be worth investing in creating, because there's a lot of work that goes into it, you have to put a lot of meat on the bones. You have to repeat this ad nauseum until people start to really grasp it, once you get those sort of early indicators that it's working. So, it's a big investment. It has to be useful. Digital LiDAR is useful because it helps people understand what Ouster does. Operational customer experience management is useful because it helps people understand what was so different about Medallia versus a company. There were a dozen companies, much, much larger, big research firms, thousands of employees, and we're upselling against these people and winning. And it's, why is this happening? What's going on? Why do I need to pay attention to this company? It's that first thing they understand about you is, you make it operational. So any category is worthwhile as long as it's meaningful and useful. And that's kind of how I feel about messaging overall, to be honest.
Yes, you're right. It's this messaging, positioning, categories. It is there to help people understand. It is there for comprehension. I believe it's about making things accessible. And these are all different devices and strategies about it. But I imagine you have had a long career kind of selling to really technical buyers, just from what you're talking about. And I know it's a real art form. It's not like you're marketing to other marketers, right? And you get to have
Right.
fun. These,
Yeah, I mean, the last 3 companies that I've been to, I actually went through it. I did a dramatic shift. Medallia, my first company, we used to sell to sort of the head of insights, and we started very much going toward the head of operations, the CEO, COO, that type of thing. Sometimes head of marketing even. But then I did a really abrupt transition, and worked at a company called PubNub, which is since grown, I think, quite a lot, still private. They make a messaging service that developers can use. They essentially sell an API. Twilio, same thing.
Right.
When I joined them, at the very least, in every sales conversation you're going to have with those companies, there's a developer, an engineer in the room who is a key stakeholder. And really, in many ways, having veto power may be too strong to say, but it is very much not a top-down sale. Whereas
Right.
a CEO can choose to implement something like Medallia, that is, they've made that decision. It's going to happen.
Happening.
And you almost need them to make that decision. When you're choosing which communications API you're going to use, initially, that oftentimes that sales cycle would originate because some developer somewhere had a need for it. When we went through a big transition of starting to sell enterprise accounts at Twilio, we went through this realization that, oh my God, we have the entire Fortune 500 already using our product. Like, someone somewhere did a small thing. We're like, great, we have an in. So I guess in that sense, there's a difference in sort of bottom-up marketing and top-down. And you really do have to, in your marketing, appeal to those end users. We always used to say at Twilio, developers have the strongest BS detectors of anybody in the organization because they're so time constrained. They evaluate things, make a decision typically very quickly, and they kind of move on because they're trying to actually solve a problem.
Right.
So that puts a really high burden on kind of the messaging and positioning that you bring as a product marketer. And we could talk about how you develop that super precise messaging, but it really made me hone my messaging skills for sure.
Right. So you're talking about an audience who, does not want to hear the fluff, doesn't have enough time, just give me the information I need. I mean, so how do you approach messaging when that's what you're dealing with?
Yeah, you have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. You do have to give them what they need. And that's, if the data point that they're looking for is buried 10 clicks deep, good luck.
Yeah.
That is, you really do need to, and Ouster to this day has a limited set of product specs on our homepage. We give the people what they're looking for.
Give them what they want.
Yeah. And then, the chewing gum part is you also have to build in the precursors to that more strategic sale that's going to happen down the line. At Ouster, it's very common, it has been common in the past for, a developer or an engineer to look at our website, sign up, do a talk to sales form, and buy a sensor that's many thousands of dollars 2 weeks later. It is a significant purchase decision, but they saw what they liked, they decided they needed to test it out, that's it. But we obviously can't stop the sale there. There's a much bigger thing that's going on in their organization that we need to be a part of. We need to figure out who the economic buyer is. We need to, all of this other stuff. But we don't get the opportunity to do that if our messaging toward that end user is off base or tries to be too high level too quickly, too strategic too quickly, right?
Right.
So there really is a balance between those two things.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because a lot of times, you're always kind of told to, high level business value, speak to the high level, that business outcomes and all that. And you're taking a different approach. So when you talk about giving people what they need and making sure it resonates, how do you find that out? Research, for example. I mean, how do you understand exactly what these impatient people want to know? Is this a research thing that you do? Tell me about that.
For sure. Particularly when you're in emerging markets or rapid growth industries, my controversial opinion, I guess, is research is overrated. And the reason is that it just does not replicate the experience of going out and sitting on 25 sales calls.
Right.
Across your customer base. You will learn so much more going out to dinner with a customer I mean, post-COVID, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
These days we just have to do a Zoom call, but you will learn so much more. And I've always guided every product marketer that I've ever worked with or who's worked on my team. When you build a persona, if you put clip art or if you put stock photography, we're not going any further. I want you to know the name of the person you're building this messaging for.
Like an actual person.
It's a persona. You should find the person who you think personifies that buying, that influencer, champion, whatever it is in that industry, in that vertical, however you're defining your markets and your targets. You need to know that person. You need to be able to text that person and say, hey, I'm sending you a screenshot of this web page I'm working on. What do you think? That level of knowing your customers is irreplaceable by research. Research probably has a time and place, but it cannot replicate, especially in the early days. And even later, I mean, Twilio was a public company. We didn't commission we didn't commission research on messaging. We either A/B tested it or we walked it by an individual customer.
After the fact. So you create it and then walk it by a customer.
Yeah, I mean, this goes, we can talk about tool set, but tools like InVision, Figma, I mean, hell, I would even just get into the source code of a web page and, it's very easy to just like mock up a new version.
Sure.
And screenshot it and send it off. Yeah. Any of that kind of stuff is super valuable and it should be in product marketer's skill set to use that. Yeah,
I love that. So in terms of research, you're kind of being on these sales calls and just really understanding the actual real person who represents these buyers. And then coming up with new messaging and then running it by customers is the way to go.
That's certainly been my experience. I mean, when you talk about a North Star for messaging, we are inundated with messages these days. And this is like a truism. Everyone knows this is not groundbreaking. People misinterpret that and think they need to be flashy or they need to be attention grabbing. What you need to be is authentic and resonant. You need to have messaging that truly resonates with people because people are also dying for information. There's so much messaging and so little information. So if you can communicate in a way that is authentic, and it has to feel real, by the way, your marketing messages go so far beyond that first page view. People keep that stuff with them as they continue down your funnel. And if what you told them on your homepage or the product page does not resonate, seems out of sync with what your sales team is going to sell them later, that's a huge mistake. And so, and the categories help to unify these things. I come back to category creation, but that to me has to be the North Star. And then, on a tactical level, clear, concise, and compelling are the three kind of things that I put in every product marketer's head. Clear, concise, compelling. If you hit all three of those while being authentic and operating within the frame of the company, your chances of success are pretty high.
It's like, no biggie.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't need to be this big thing. It needs to be good.
Exactly. I am right there with you. 100% with everything you just said. The 3 C's is how I like to call them. It's everything, but it's hard. Sometimes the simplest, the clearest writing is the hardest to do.
100% the clearest.
So I think it's totally a tough thing to do, but it's worth fighting for. So
totally.
With you 100%. And I love your pragmatic approach to marketing, messaging, and category design. I can see how you are really great in the space that you play with like these emerging markets and bringing new technologies into the world. I can definitely see why you're awesome at that. So thank you for sharing your stories. And again, congratulations on that massive achievement and seeing your category on the side of the New York Stock Exchange. Definitely awesome. So well done for that.
Well done to the Ouster team that made that happen. It was small, played a very small part of that. But anyway, thank you, Emma. It's been great talking with you.
It's been great talking with you. And thank you to everyone who is watching today. Bye.